In October of 2022, the case of 20-month-old Quinton Simon captured the media by storm after his mother Leilani reported him missing from their home in Savannah, Georgia.
We want him back in our arms, holding us. Here, I've been here every day since this.
On the news, her teary-eyed plea to the community to help look for her son may have had people feeling sorry for her at first. However, an investigation into his disappearance made it clear that Leilani knew more than she was letting on. The details surrounding this case have had people comparing her to mothers like Casey Anthony, and if what is being alleged is true, Leilani might actually be worse. On YouTube and in the true crime community, there have been countless live streams and update videos, but it's actually pretty hard to find one that goes over the entire story. In this video, we'll be going over everything we know so far about this tragic situation. But to do that, we need to go behind the headlines. Leilani Simon's mother, Billie Jo Howell, has described the dynamics of their family like the TV show Shameless. A lot of love with a lot of chaos. Billie Jo raised Leilani along 4 other children, all from different fathers. Billie's oldest son, Joe Swain, went on to create a good life for himself by joining the Air Force. However, her second son, Nathaniel Betterton, is currently serving a 20-year prison sentence for a robbery and murder that he committed back in 2011. Billie's third son, Paul, seems to have been able to steer clear from legal troubles for the most part, but the same could not be said for Leilani. In Billie's own words, Leilani hasn't always made the best choices, and from a young age, the mother and daughter started frequently butting heads. At the age of 20, Leilani and her boyfriend at the time, named Cody Wharton, welcomed a son named Zane. Unfortunately, their relationship wouldn't last long, with Cody describing Leilani's personality as unpredictable. They shared custody of Zane, but he primarily lived with Leilani, who had moved in with Billie and her husband Tommy Howell for help with the baby. After Cody and Leilani broke up, she went on to meet another man named Bubba Moss. She met him at a swimming hole near where she lived in Savannah. Bubba had 2 daughters from a previous relationship, but he and Leilani began casually hooking up, and she ultimately became pregnant in the spring of 2020. During her pregnancy, Leilani got into some legal trouble after she was arrested in July for breaking into a neighbor's home and stealing $50. The neighbor lived in a trailer on the same property as the house her mom, Billie, was renting. The original charge was for first-degree felony burglary, but she was able to plead it down to criminal trespassing. During the investigation, Leilani reported to police that it was actually Bubba who convinced her to break in, causing there to be a warrant put out for his arrest. When the property owner found out about the burglary, he evicted Billie Jo, and Leilani ended up moving in with Bubba's family in Hiltonia. At the time, Bubba didn't know that Leilani had blamed the burglary on him or that there was a warrant out for his arrest. In October of 2020, Leilani was arrested again for possession of marijuana, and things just really started going downhill in their relationship. According to Bubba, Leilani spent her days snorting cocaine and smoking weed and would lash out at him when she was craving more. He said there were times when she hit him in the face and would also sleep with other men just to get cash for drugs. These claims proved true when she gave birth to their son Quinton on January 8th, 2021, and Leilani tested positive for cocaine. The next month, Bubba was served with the arrest warrant for the burglary back in the summer, but the charges were dropped after a friend made a recording of Leilani admitting to lying about his involvement. Needless to say, Bubba broke up with Leilani and had minimal contact with her and Quinton going forward. Due to the fact that Leilani had what the court referred to as unrehabilitated drug use, she lost custody of Zane and Quinton. They were placed with Billie Jo, who had just moved into her new home with her husband in Savannah, Georgia. 2 months later, Leilani began dating a man named Daniel Youngkin, who had his own criminal history of drug charges as well. Daniel, who goes by Danny, was also attempting to start a rap career and was only bringing in small amounts of money from his jobs here and there. He and Leilani were living together in North Carolina when she was arrested again on charges of felony larceny after stealing cigarettes, popcorn, and drinks from a gas station. For this, she was only given 5 months probation and community service. A few months later, she was finally sentenced for the burglary charge back in 2020, but again, only received probation. During this time, Billie was a full-time union worker at a nearby nuclear plant and ultimately needed to pay a babysitter for help with the children during the day. A woman named Diana, who lived down the street from Billie, offered to take care of the boys, and even though she only charged $30 a day, that still added up. In April of 2022, Leilani was sued by the Department of Human Services funds in order to begin paying her mom child support for the care of Quinton and Zane. Things became even more challenging when Leilani got pregnant yet again and gave birth to a daughter named Sky Yunkin in June of 2022. Even though Leilani began working at a liquor store during this time, she and Danny's wages were not enough to get suitable housing, so Billy ultimately decided to let them move into her home until they could get on their feet. Now, I'm not exactly sure if this was even legal, given the fact that Leilani had lost custody of her sons, or maybe she just wasn't allowed to watch them unsupervised. Regardless, the situation at the house quickly became chaotic. At the time, Billy's son Paul had moved in as well, so there was Billy, her husband Tommy, Paul, Leilani, Danny, Zane, Quinton, and Sky, all under one roof. Billy was starting to feel like Leilani and Danny weren't really pulling their weight, and resentment started to build due to them leaving messes around the house, not contributing to food, and being disrespectful. The police were even called on more than one occasion due to really volatile arguments erupting between them. With Leilani and Danny now living with Billy, and with Leilani attempting to keep her job at the liquor store, the neighbor Diana began looking after baby Sky as well. Diana didn't even charge extra for her since she was reportedly such an easy baby. The weird thing was, even if Leilani didn't have to work, she would still bring all of the kids over for Diana to watch and would just hang out at the house alone. The other thing Diana started to notice was that oftentimes the boys would come over with bruises and what appeared to be belt marks, and Leilani wouldn't even bring Sky over with diapers or milk. People in the neighborhood would also say that if the kids weren't with Diana, Zane and Quinton were seen playing in a ditch and even in the backyard pool alone on more than one occasion. So it's clear that if Billy Joe was at work, Diana's house may have been the safest place for them. In September of 2022, things started to get really bad between the family, with Billy accusing Leilani and Danny of damaging her property and even stealing. She tried to get them to move out on their own, but they apparently refused. Billy felt conflicted about forcing Leilani to leave because that meant that Sky would be leaving too, but for her own peace, she felt like she had no other choice. The only option to get Leilani and Danny out of the house was to serve them with an eviction notice. Toward the end of the month, Leilani and Danny received the notice, and Leilani was due in court for another child support hearing. She ended up not appearing at the hearing, but the judge ruled that the child support payment would increase to $150 a month beginning in November of that year. The next week, Billy was set to leave on a 3-week work trip and hoped that by the time she returned, Leilani and Danny would be gone. Leilani posted on Facebook asking if they knew of any homes for rent in the Savannah area, but with Billy now out of the house for a few weeks, they weren't feeling as rushed. The children were usually dropped off with Diana between 5:30 and 6 a.m. each morning, and picked up between 3:30 and 6 p.m., depending on everyone's schedule. On October 4th, Leilani picked up the kids from Diana at around 4:30 and told her that they'd see her tomorrow. Strangely, the next morning at 5:29 a.m., Danny sent Diana a text saying they wouldn't actually need her to watch the kids. Leilani had apparently gotten her wisdom teeth out the day before, and would be home all day, so they didn't need a babysitter. He then reportedly saw Quinton sleeping in his pack and play before he left for work at around 6 a.m. Diana found the text a little strange because, again, even if Leilani wasn't working, she'd still normally always bring the kids over for her to babysit. Plus, if you just got your wisdom teeth out, you'd think a babysitter would be really helpful so you could get some rest. Even though this was out of the norm, Diana wasn't really worried since they lived just down the street. However, she did become extremely worried when Danny texted her again at 9 a.m. asking if she'd seen Quinton. Being that Quinton was only 2 years old, Diana immediately rushed over to Billy and Leilani's house to find out what was going on. What was even weirder was when she got there. Leilani and Danny didn't seem to want to help look for Quinton, even though he was clearly not there. They said, "We already looked," when most parents whose toddler was gone would be frantically still searching everywhere, not just saying, "Oh well, we looked, can't find him." Diana then asked if they called 911, and they hadn't done that either. They were just standing on the porch nonchalantly until Diana told them to get on the phone and make a report. Diana then decided to call Billy, who was still out of town, to tell her what was going on because Leilani hadn't told her anything either. When Leilani and Danny made the 911 call, Leilani seemed much more urgent. Danny said that when Leilani woke up, the door to the house was open. Quinton was gone, and they believed someone kidnapped him.
911, what was your emergency?
Yeah, I just come 535 Buckhalter Road. We believe someone's been kidnapped.
535 Buckhalter?
Yeah.
Did you say someone's been kidnapped?
Yeah, we...
Your 1-year-old son? Yes! When was the last time you seen him?
this morning when I left at 6.
Okay, have you guys gone outside to check the area?
Yeah.
How old is he?
And he can't open the door.
So you think someone broke in and there any signs of breaking in?
No. No breaking in, the door was open.
Was it unlocked?
Yeah, but the front door had bolts though, but yeah, it was.
Okay. Give me a description of him. Give me a description.
He's, like,
He's what, ma'am?
He's got tan skin, dark brown hair. His eyes are like a brown green hazel.
Okay. And he's black, white, Hispanic.
He's Hawaiian.
He's what, ma'am?
Hawaiian.
Hawaiian?
Police arrived at the home just after 10 a.m. and Diana offered to take the other children so they could focus on searching for Quinton.
Okay. So then me and my girls, we go to McDonald's. I live on Chatham Parkway. The McDonald's is literally right down the road. On our way back, I get a text from Danny. He says, "Have you seen Quinton?" I said, "No, why?" Well, immediately I called him. They didn't want that. He stood there. He looked at me with the most coldest look I've ever seen and said, "We've already looked." I said, "Okay." So I stood there for a minute and I looked around outside of where I was. Leilani was smoking a cigarette and Danny was standing there. And I go to get in my car. I was going to call Billy Joe, and I did call Billy Joe. She didn't call him. Leilani didn't call the police until I said, "Have you called the police?" And then she
When
calls
investigators
the police.
began questioning Leilani, she immediately tried to throw Bubba Moss under the bus, saying that he could have come back to pick Quinton up. However, he was quickly ruled out as he had been working over 85 miles away and hadn't even spoken to Leilani in months. By noon, a massive foot search began with the Chatham County Police, who also deployed drones to scour the area in case Quinton had somehow gotten out of the house by accident and wandered away. By 3 that afternoon, Billy returned home to help aid in the search. Almost immediately, she started to get a feeling that her daughter may not have been telling everything she knew about what happened to Quinton, but she tried to remain supportive and help as much as she could.
She hasn't always done the right things, and sometimes she does really great, and then sometimes she doesn't. And I don't know what to think right now. I don't know what to believe, because I don't think anybody ever believes that this is going to happen to them. I don't know if I can trust her or if I don't.
At around 3:30, the chief of police made a statement to the media that there was no evidence to indicate an abduction, and that the FBI would be getting involved in the investigation. Soon, helicopters with heat-sensing technology joined the search to find any possible movement in the surrounding forested areas. The search continued through the night and into the morning, and investigators worked on getting search warrants for the residents. In a statement, Bobby said, "I couldn't imagine that Leilani would hurt one of her kids, but I can't say the thought hasn't gone through my mind 100,000 times. I don't know what to believe right now. I don't know if I can trust her." From there, neighbors and media personnel who had begun gathering outside could hear arguing in the home late into the night. The FBI also got a tip that prompted them to begin asking residents of a nearby mobile home park if they had seen Leilani's vehicle. She had apparently admitted to going there during the night before Quinton's disappearance to get some Orajel from a friend for her teeth. However, it was noted that Waste Management picked up trash from 5 large dumpsters in the park 3 times per week, and if Leilani were seen near the dumpsters, that could be suspicious. As the days passed with no signs of baby Quinton, hope began to fade that he would be found somewhere alive. Leilani even made a statement that perhaps someone had taken him because they thought they could be his saviors. Saviors from what? Wasn't exactly clear.
We want him not to be found in that landfill. We want him found happy and alive. We want him back in our arms, holding us. That's what we want. We're just hoping that he's in somebody's house and they're feeding him, and they are hoping that, you know, maybe they wanted a baby or couldn't have a baby. Maybe they thought they were his savior.
Dive teams searched all surrounding bodies of water. The family's pool was drained, their house was gone through from top to bottom, and it was almost as though Quinton had just vanished into thin air. However, as more and more true crime channels began following the case, the more everyone started pointing the finger at Leilani. Perhaps in desperation to not want to blame her daughter, Billy even started pointing the finger at Diana, the babysitter. She could be seen accusing her of doing something to Quinton in an explosive recorded video, and obviously tensions were running high.
Don't put nothing in your yard! This is my baby, not yours! That's your right, baby! That's my baby! I texted you and I told you what was my baby! Oh, so now it's my fault? You didn't go get it! I text you! I asked you over and over! I got the text! Over and over I asked you! So you want to blame me? I don't care about the text! You think I'm gonna hit you at me? Hey, you think I would do that? Yeah! Really? Because I'm what?
No one likes
I'm
you.
what?
You
I'm what? No, I don't blame anybody. I should not have been out of town. You did. You shouldn't have. No, I'm not. I did. I told you. I was trying to provide. I even provided for you. You didn't. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. I didn't pay for your family, your entire family. I didn't ask you. Your entire family. Keep recording.
Don't take my phone.
Keep recording.
Don't take my phone.
Good, you were wrong. You were wrong. I begged you to help. I begged you to help. Put that on social media. I begged you to help. Oh yeah, and I begged you to help. I said, hey Michelle, please get the kids. You're a liar. Take them. I'll give you 300 a week. I'm about to put it all over. I'm a liar. I'm about to put it all over. Good. Good, because you're awful to say you're going to put a memorial. My baby's not dead. You are a liar. My baby's not dead. My baby's not dead.
Investigators began pressing Leilani more and more about visiting the nearby mobile home park, and she ultimately admitted to throwing away normal household garbage in the dumpster. This admission really piqued the interest of everyone involved in the case, and on October 12th, Leilani Simon was named the prime suspect in the case. After searching the home again with cadaver dogs, blacking out the windows to conduct suspected luminol testing, and gathering more evidence, the Chatham County Police Department, or CCPD, released a statement that they no longer believe Quinton to be alive. In a press conference the next day, the CCPD stated that apparently Leilani didn't remember anything about the morning Quinton disappeared. In a statement to the media, she had this to say:
I'm here, I've been here every day since this. I am not running and I'm not hiding. And if something does come up that I am at fault, I will take myself to that police station.
With police now believing that Quinton was no longer alive, CPS got involved and removed Zane and Sky from the home to be taken into protective custody. Even though it was well known to the public that Leilani was thought to have done something to Quinton, without more evidence, she still had not been charged. This prompted the true crime and local community members to begin picketing outside of their home, calling for her to be arrested. Even though this was a little different from what we normally cover on this channel, I just wanted to show you this video that was taken outside the home where Quinton was missing. This was at night when people were still picketing, and I'll just let you decide what you think about it for yourself. On October 18th, CCPD said in another press conference that they believed Quinton was placed into a dumpster at the mobile home park, which was subsequently taken to the local landfill. That same day, protesters became even more upset when Billy and Leilani were seen at a local bar called Stingray's Seafood, drinking and taking shots. Some were even arrested for disorderly conduct outside the Howe home, as well as outside the bar, but this just goes to show how passionate people were becoming about getting justice for Quinton. It also just seemed like a really bizarre thing for a family to do when a child is missing, so it's understandable that people were upset. The search of the landfill had to be postponed due to Tropical Storm Nicole coming to Savannah, and wouldn't start back up again until November 14th. On November 18th, there was a break in the case when the CCPD announced that they had found what they believed to be human remains. After confirming that it was in fact human, they still needed to conduct DNA testing to determine if it was Quinton Simon. By that point, Leilani had checked herself into a drug treatment facility, but when her mom found out that human remains were located at the landfill, she knew that she needed to try to help her daughter do the right thing and take responsibility. She went to pick Leilani up from the treatment center, took her to lunch, and then drove her directly to the FBI office.
Whenever I left from there, I took her to Chinatown Buffet and let her have a meal because I knew already that it was going to be the last free world meal that she was going to have. So I leave from there, and I take her to the FBI office. And I sit at the FBI office for 4 hours. And I hug her, and I tell her that the best thing she can do is just be honest and tell the truth. Now, Leilani still at this time is holding to her that she didn't do this. Now, because of the way I feel and the way I believe, and because of the circumstances that has happened over time, I don't know that I can believe my daughter. But there is a part of me that wants to. So, I hugged my daughter for the last time today. For a very, very long time. I hug her for the last time. And I tell her, she has got to figure out a way to take accountability for the things that have happened in her life. Not only in this situation, but in every situation over time. And that she's going to be in a lot of dark places. And in those dark places, it's going to feel lonely, but she will be able to get through it. And that all she has to do is pray. And I hug her. And I put my hands on her arms as I back away from her. And then whenever I walked out the doors, they started reading her rights.
From there, Leilani was arrested, and 5 days later the remains were confirmed to belong to Quinton Simon.
Eventually, the FBI honed in on a Chatham County landfill. The expert searchers spent 31 days there, inspecting 1.2 million pounds of trash before finding Quinton's remains.
We feel that we have a very strong case. We have put thousands of hours into this, and we believed that this was the right move today to be able to do that.
By December of 2022, a grand jury indicted Leilani on 19 charges, including malice murder, felony murder, concealing the death of another, false report of a crime, making false statements, cruelty to children in the first degree, and aggravated assault. The indictment says specifically that Leilani assaulted Quinton with an object resulting in serious injury, causing his death, and then concealing it by placing his body in a dumpster at the Azalea Mobile Home Plaza. On July of 2023, Leilani's public defenders laughably tried to argue that Leilani's charges should be dropped because the indictment against her fails to say how exactly she killed her toddler son. However, in a pretty scathing rebuttal, the district attorney's office wrote, "The defendant is charged with murdering her 20-month-old son, Quinton Simon, with concealing Quinton's death by discarding his body in a dumpster, the contents of which were then deposited at a local landfill, with falsely reporting his disappearance as an abduction, and with telling investigators a series of retreating lies, moving from one lie to the next only as each lie became untenable in the face of additional information uncovered by law enforcement, because the ins and outs of waste management are perhaps not common knowledge. More specifically as to what happened to Quinton after the defendant discarded him and the dumpster might be illuminating. Hours after the defendant had discarded Quinton's body in the dumpster, the hydraulic forks of a front-loading garbage truck lifted up the dumpster and dumped its contents, including Quinton, into the large box that constitutes the back of the truck. Then a powerful compactor built into the truck compacted the contents of the box. This powerful compacting action is desirable so that trucks can collect as much garbage as possible before having to visit the landfill. Eventually, the truck disgorged its load at the trash basin of a local landfill. A bulldozer then shoved the heaped garbage some 300 feet from the trash basin to a cell. This is not a neat process. It requires repeated trips by the bulldozer and involves, in addition to shoving, some amount of spreading, smearing, etc. Once at the cell, the garbage and Quinton were compacted by a roughly 50-ton machine that looks something like a steamroller, but with rollers that are studded rather than smooth. Then there was the search. Once law enforcement had identified the cell in which Quinton was likely to be located, they set about searching it. This process consisted of excavators scooping garbage out of the cell and loading it into dump trucks. The dump trucks then unloaded the garbage at an open area known as a search deck, and it was spread out into an even layer on the search deck. Law enforcement then painstakingly combed through the garbage, and the garbage was cleared from the search deck to make room for the next load. This process was repeated day after day, load after load, ton after ton, until these efforts finally met with grim success. All of which is to say Quinton's body went through a lot, as a direct result of the defendant's deliberate choice not only to conceal Quinton's death, but to do so specifically by subjecting him to the violence of the waste management system. Law enforcement did not discover his remains, not his intact body, but his remains, for more than a month after his disappearance. Naturally, Quinton's body had by then undergone severe trauma and decomposition. To be clear, it is not as though law enforcement found Quinton's remains in a single location on the search deck. Rather, they were dispersed across it. A bone here, a bit of tissue there. Quinton's cause of death, therefore, was not apparent from lay observation of his remains. And while forensic analysis is ongoing, no cause of death has yet been ascertained forensically, and likely will not ever be, nor has other evidence conclusively established Quinton's specific cause of death. No one saw the defendant murder Quinton, and the defendant's various statements to law enforcement and to the news media as to how Quinton came to be dead were an inscrutable and inculpatory mishmash of I don't know, I don't remember, I don't think I would do anything to hurt him, and but if I did, I will take responsibility. The state of the evidence as Quinton's cause of death, then, is the fault of the defendant and the defendant alone. Further, her actions in disposing of his body and concealing its whereabouts indicate that her specific intent and hope was that Quinton would never be found at all. The idea seems to have been no body, no case. It's against this factual backdrop that the defendant now moves to quash her murder charges on the grounds that they purportedly contain insufficient information as to how exactly she killed Quinton. One marvels at the brazenness. Dropping these charges would be tantamount to telling the defendant and other would-be murderers, get rid of the body entirely or do a good enough job trying, and the court will reward your cunning and depravity by declaring you beyond the reach of prosecution for murder. In effect, the defendant asked the court to validate her actions by consummating her plan. Fortunately, this is not how it works. Under Georgia law, an indictment is not required to include any more specifics than the evidence, which again was shaped by the defendant. In this calculation, she appears to have underestimated the perseverance, commitment, and competence of the multi-agent law enforcement team that undertook this investigation. Even this is not an accurate reflection of the law. Here, the murder charges put the defendant on notice that the state intends to prove that she intentionally killed Quinton, that even if she did not specifically intend to kill Quinton, she nevertheless did kill him by way of an aggravated assault with an object that caused him serious bodily harm, and that, in the course of causing his death, she caused him cruel and excessive physical pain. Under the circumstances of this case and under the law, nothing more is required. Leilani has pleaded not guilty to all charges and is currently being held at Chatham County Detention Center without bond. On July 15, 2024, it was announced that jury selection for Leilani's trial will begin on October 9, 2024, almost 2 years to the date that Quinton was reported missing. As for Leilani's other two children, in April of 2024, Billy Joe petitioned to regain custody of Zane and Sky. However, a congressional report on an investigation into Georgia's foster care system was released, which concluded that mismanagement of the system led to the deaths and injuries of several children, including Quinton. It explains that he was under Billy's care as part of a safety plan from the Department of Children and Family Services, but she chose to leave Quinton alone with Leilani when his death occurred. So at this point, I don't think it's clear whether or not she will be getting the children back, but maybe perhaps their fathers could step up and take care of them. I mean, that would be nice. It's also important to note that the FBI and CCPD have been adamant that Leilani's boyfriend, Danny Youngkin, was not involved in the deaths of Quinton, so hopefully he can find a way to be there for his daughter. At the end of the day, regardless of how it happened, it's clear that Leilani Simon did everything she could to cover up killing her precious little boy. There is evidence that she visited a drug dealer the day before his death, and we already know she suffered from substance abuse issues. That seems to be a running theme in cases like this, and honestly, Billy Joe needs to be held accountable for allowing Leilani to be alone with the boys when she didn't have custody of them. She lost custody for a reason, and it's really baffling how some can lose custody of 2 children but then have more and retain custody of the new ones like Leilani did with Sky. If she wasn't fit to be a parent of the first 2, all 3 of them should have been placed in a safe environment until she could get treatment. Now, the state is obviously holding back some of the evidence found for them to believe he was struck with something, based on the condition his body was discovered in. I don't know if they'd be able to determine that just visually, so I'm sure a lot more will come out in the trial. We will definitely have to keep tabs on this case, because after nearly 2 years, it's time for baby Quinton to get the justice he deserves.
What's your bun? You so silly. What is it? Yeah. Oh. Hey.
This has been Joshua John with Behind the Headlines, and until next time, stay safe.